Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Christian. All very good and very nice to be here as well. So I'm Tim Wilkins. I'm the Environment Director for INTERTANKO. I'm extremely pleased to be here because it was a little bit touch and go at one point, Raoul. The reason it was touch and go is because we are still putting the wraps, or taking the wraps off, I should say, the project that I'm going to explain to you in the next 13 to 14 minutes. And we weren't sure whether or not we were ready to talk about it. So thanks for being patient, Rob. Much appreciate it. Some of you may know INTERTANKO. For those of you who don't know INTERTANKO, we represent oil, chemical, and gas carriers, roughly around 184 owners and managers at the moment, alongside as well over 250 associate members, including OTG. What I'd like to take a little bit of time now is possibly to build on what Christian has just talked about now. I think it's very smart to have me speaking afterwards, because he's going to help me get through my first slide of my presentation anyway. We have responded, if you like, to our members' requests for some guidance and leadership on ESG. And this is basically a short overview of what we have achieved in the last 6 to 7 months, and I believe is a stepping stone forward for our sector and possibly for the industry as well. What are the drivers? Well, you just had 15 minutes of Christian explaining what the drivers are, but from our perspective, we see it possibly in a very similar way, certainly on the high level. There's no escaping the fact that ESG has come to this sector, to shipping and to tanker shipping in particular, through the financial route. Financially driven and corporate legislation. So we're aware that they're being regulated to some degree, but there's also civil society and pressure on the banking system. Now, that pressure is starting to work its way down, as you say, trickle-down effect, if you like, to the larger corporate entities. It's not quite touching us yet in the tanker sector, but it's slowly moving that way. I've put the logos here of the European Union, and that was mentioned previously, that actually one of the major drivers is through Europe. We certainly see that. We see that from the regulatory perspective and not just from the financial perspective. And what we're seeing now with the non-financial reporting requirements from Europe, whilst affecting larger companies and not directly impacting the tanker owners right now, we're seeing it starting to impact some of the stakeholders in our sector. For example, the major oil charterers, the trading companies, and even down to some of the larger underwriters. The sort of third tab here is the fact that actually we're well aware that a large proportion now, or an increasing proportion of INTERTANKO's members are starting to produce and have done ESG reports. Predominantly larger companies and predominantly those that are publicly listed. However, what we are also aware of and became aware of in the last 6 to 12 months was the fact that we're getting more and more requests from smaller independent members of INTERTANKO to start developing and looking into what sustainability and ESG reporting means to them. To the extent where actually they're being asked what their ESG policy is by the charterers, and I think that's starting to focus the minds a little bit. So from INTERTANKO's perspective, we started looking at this in November last year and quickly realized that this was something well beyond just an environmental reporting platform or initiative. And in fact, we needed to look more closely at the social side of things and the governance side of things. We drew in representatives and expertise from our members. And what was really interesting about this was the fact that we drew in a working group from these various committees. INTERTANKO is structured around certain committees of our members. We have 14 committees focused on different things. And what was interesting about this is we've got expertise from within these different committees, but we got expertise and interest from those owners who've been releasing ESG reports for the last 2 or 3 years, large corporate entities, down to those who are operating 4, 5, or 10 vessels. And there was alignment from the very first working group meeting that we had back in November last year as to which way we should be going on this, and I'll explain what that direction is. But what was really good, and it's a rare situation where you get everybody from the largest company to the smallest company all looking at this in the same way and through the same sort of prism, if you like. What's the outcome then? At its most fundamental level, of course, we're a shipping association. We like producing guides, and we do that very well. So, of course, we have developed a guidance document, an introduction to it. It's a stepping stone, if you like, a pathway into what ESG actually is. It runs from the very fundamental elements of how we've transitioned from CSR through to sustainability and ESG in particular. It explains it, it communicates it, if you like. We got very much bogged down in a few early meetings because there's a lot of terms that need to be understood when he's talking about ESG. And that actually is one of the reasons that we're doing this, trying to communicate what the tanker sector is doing to those parties who are interested in what the tanker sector is doing, those who don't have an expertise. And I'll come to that in a moment when I'm talking about TMSA. We've also established a model framework for what ESG reporting would look like in the tanker sector. It's a tool basically for what should be considered to be included within a report. And I've used an extract here from the European entity who's working on this at the moment because I think it's useful to capture what we're trying to achieve here and what we're trying to achieve in any kind of report that needs to be understandable. That's the communication tool. It has to be relevant. You have to look at materiality, what you're reporting and why you're reporting it. Is it representative of what you're trying to achieve within your organization, your company? Is it verifiable? And again, I'll come back to that and associate it with greenwashing to a degree. And is it comparable? At the end of the day, that's what they're looking to achieve, is some sort of comparability between companies. So we've established within that guidance there is a model framework. A lot of our time has also been spent looking at what the industry is doing at the moment in terms of data collection. A lot of this, of course, is collecting and collating not just quantitative data, but qualitative as well, and looking at what initiatives are being undertaken by a certain company at any point in time, and seeing how that would work with your ESG reporting. So we've developed several mapping tools within this guidance document, pretty basic, and I'll do a little screenshot of that in a short while to show you what we've done and why we've done it and how. And last but not least, of course, it's a big issue to try and grapple with. And what we're trying to do is to get give an opportunity, if you like, or a tool to our members for the time being to enter into this world of ESG and ESG reporting and explain how to do it and what the options availability are. So we've developed a resource, or will develop a resource for our website once we've completed the task, which covers the standards, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also some of the regulatory drivers behind it as well, because this is a moving feast at the moment. Now, before I go into the guiding principles and the meat of the presentation, I think it's important to note, and we were asked this at INTERTANKO's council a few weeks ago by the members who are approving us releasing this project. Are you establishing a standard or are you establishing a framework? Well, right now we're establishing a framework. We're not prescribing standards. We're not trying to tell our members, and the members aren't telling each other what to report, how to report. We're establishing a framework saying if you're going to report, then these are the basic principles you should be looking at and adhering to, and this is how you should structure your report. So it becomes comparable, if you like. We're not right at the stage of establishing a set of indicators and standards, but we have referenced and we've looked at what's out there at the moment and what's being commonly used. I wanted to sort of set that scene now, just in case I get any questions about it in a moment. So if we're going to focus on guiding principles, we established 6 guiding principles, and it's probably easiest to focus on what they are. First and foremost, we recognize that at the moment, there is no standard way of reporting for the tanker sector. In fact, there's no standard way of reporting for the shipping sector in totality. Now, SASB, of course, have their marine transportation sector, and we know that GRI are looking at developing something in the future, but there's nothing there at the moment. There was a void. So first and foremost, let's establish a framework for the tanker sector. Let's try and shape what it may well look like. As was mentioned before, it's coming our way. Let's decide now what it may look like instead of somebody else telling this industry what it will look like in the future. However, we recognize that there are entities out there that have been working for a long time on various ESG standards and metrics and indicators. And in fact, a lot of them are being used by our members. So we pooled that knowledge. We pooled and we looked at what was being used today, GRI, SASB, sometimes both, sometimes the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Looked at what was relevant for our sector and used those as examples of what could or could not be used. I said before as well that we looked at making it tanker specific. Thank you. I can do this in 5 minutes. I can do this. I've only got 3 more points to get through.
No, don't worry.
I said, we've got to combine it and make it relevant to the tanker sector. What information and what is the tanker sector doing today that is absolutely relevant to ESG and its principles? We recognize straight away that actually there's a lot of data being collected, not just on decarbonisation and GHGs and the usual environmental side of things with biodiversity, ballast water, biofouling and this kind of thing, but also going through to the social elements, the crewing side of things, the competency in the management systems, the maritime anti-corruption initiatives that are underway within companies, and also how that is being structured within the management system. How is that being governed, and how is the leadership looking at that within different companies? So we've looked at that and we've cross-referenced it, and in fact that forms a large part of what we're doing with this mapping, cross-referencing what is being collected, collated, and done by tanker owners today and could be used as an ESG report, or within an ESG report. It's non-prescriptive. We're taking baby steps. We're setting up a framework. What could not be. We're giving examples. We're explaining what ESG is and how you can apply it. We're not telling anybody how to do it and what to do. We've put a lot of emphasis on the materiality side of things, and in fact, when you start reading into this, it's very important for each entity, each company to decide what to report and why it's important to that company and its stakeholders. We've explained a lot about that and tried to ensure that those operating 5 or 10 tankers are probably doing something slightly different to those who are doing 100 or 200 tankers. Using ESG standards, as I said before, GRI, SASB are the main ones, but selecting the right metrics and the right approach. Using it, if you like, as a smorgasbord. Pick and choose which ones you think are relevant based on your materiality assessment. Maybe you can go beyond that as well. Look beyond just the standards that are being used today. And use the data that is being collected by a company already. One of the key points here, which links 3 and 4, was the fact that we've used a lot of cross-referencing to the Tanker Management Self-Assessment, TMSA. It was one thing that set the tanker sector apart from all the other sectors in the industry, was the fact that this data, running right through ESG, was being collected, assessed, and verified already. And we've used that as a key feature of the map and the guiding principles. The fact that we're basing a lot on what is being achieved already within a company was the fact that we didn't want to create a further administrative burden for our members. And in fact, I think when you look at it, you do have to put resources into it. We're not saying that this is going to be an easy win. It's certainly not an easy win. But we don't want to be creating another management system, another type of tool, thank you, or another sort of ISO standard and so on and so forth. What we're doing is providing a map for this is the information you're collecting today, this is why it may be relevant to report it, and this is how you can report it and make it relevant to your ESG report. So hopefully we're cutting out some of that early research into ESG and ESG reporting for our members. I've got 2 minutes, or 1.5 minutes now, to do my last piece, which is credibility. The 6th guiding principle was to make this credible. And in fact, that's probably why it's been a little bit delayed, is because we want to make sure that it absolutely is and it's watertight. We're very sensitive to greenwashing, and we know that we've got to provide something that is credible, not because of an INTERTANKO perspective, but for those members that are going to go ahead and start using the framework that we are offering. We've used TMSA because that is credible. It's verified already, it's audited, it's assessed. It's something that within our sector is certainly something that's considered to be a credible, if you like, system, a management system where information can be drawn from. But look at also, we've combined that with some of the mandatory requirements. Look at EU MRV, IMO data collection system as the easy wins situation where you're already collecting that data, it's already verified. Use that data. The credibility also goes beyond just what data is being collected and how you're reporting it, but also to the fact that INTERTANKO will be promoting the use of this framework. We've already started to engage with SASB and GRI to check with them where they are in the process and explain to them what we're trying to achieve. They have welcomed the interaction. In fact, we got more questions back from SASB than we did send to them about what we're doing, which I think is a good way forward. We know that GRI, for example, are also developing a shipping-specific topic in the future, and we would like to be part of that development process. As Christian said before as well, SASB, and in particular GRI, are also actively engaged in the mandatory requirements. So I'm nearly done. are really active in the mandatory requirements. So let us get engaged with them on a non-mandatory, voluntary basis and work together with them now if they're going to become influential in 2, 3, 4 years' time with the mandatory requirements in the future. And last but not least here is making sure that what we're doing is accepted and recognized by our stakeholders, the tanker sector stakeholders, the charterers, the oil companies, the traders, the investors in our members' companies, and those who regulate our industry. As I said, we frequently go to Brussels to speak with the Commission and the Parliament representatives. We will show them what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it in terms of non-financial reporting and transparency. I'm happy to give the slide pack to you to send around, because I've got a few more sort of snapshots of what the tools look like. As I said, it's very basic at the moment. These are some of the mapping tools we've put into the place, some of the explanations we've put into the text, and some of the examples. That's about it. I've got about 1 minute 23 over time. I'm sorry about that, but as I said, the slides are there, and I'm happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you very much. Cheers.